Have you ever stood in your kitchen at the end of a long day and thought to yourself, I just don't even have the energy right now to think about, let alone cook dinner? You've probably had that thought more than once, right? Well, if so, this episode is for you. I'm not talking about the nights when we are feeling inspired, or even the nights when you have a meal plan to follow. I'm talking about those nights when everyone's hungry, you're exhausted, and whatever ends up on the table just needs to work. There are a lot of conversations around a love of cooking. But the topic I wanted to touch on today is one that I think is actually a bigger part of everyday life that doesn't come to the surface as often. It's not sexy, it's not Instagram worthy, and there's no recipe to be shared. What I'm talking about is those nights where it's breakfast for dinner, or leftovers, or dinner might be cereal, or something in the back of your freezer that can be consumed quickly so we can move on with the rest of our evening routine. And even if we tell ourselves it's fine to do those things or that we have those nights, sometimes there's that quiet feeling or little negative, nagging voice in your head that says, well, you could have tried a little harder, or you could have prepared a little better. And today I want to talk about that, about why dinner doesn't have to stand for anything other than what it is. This episode isn't about recipes or tips or quick solutions. It's just a conversation today about letting dinner just be dinner and allowing that to be enough. So if you're ready to join me, perhaps you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is so resonating with me right now, then cozy on in and get ready because I'm about to get into it. Welcome to Home Cook Stories, the podcast that brings flavor and inspiration to your ears. I'm your host, Julia Darling, a working mother with a family of 5 to feed and an insatiable appetite for all things food. Inspired by the life lessons from my mom, I believe food has profound links to our lives, from family recipes that leave a legacy to the culinary journeys that define our travels and the food that shapes our culture and lifestyle. Join me on this audio adventure as we dig into delicious topics, bringing more meaning and connectivity to our lives. And yes, we'll definitely work up an appetite. Remember, food isn't just what's on your plate. It helps tell the story of who you are. So wherever you are in this moment, pull up a seat and tune in, because life's too short for bland stories and boring meals. Welcome to Home Cook Stories. Does anyone else feel like the first 5 to 6 weeks of 2026 have come out the gate with this level of speed and intensity that would normally occur within a full calendar year? I mean, there have been so many evenings as of late where we get to dinner time and I am just mentally tapped out and physically exhausted. It's those evenings where I'm just standing in the kitchen and this feeling, just overwhelms you of I don't have capacity to take in one more thing in this day. And then there's the universal question, what's for dinner? And here's the thing. Obviously, I love to cook, but cooking in real life day in and day out for a family of 5, I can guarantee you is not always joy-filled. There are nights where I am ready to throw in the towel and just declare that leftovers is where it's at and pull whatever you can from the refrigerator that you can warm up and make for yourself, which, as many of us would remember from our own childhood, is often met with groans and a sincere lack of enthusiasm. Yes, sometimes I can pull together pantry staples and make something that feels weeknight, rustic, and charming. Marcella Hazan's homemade tomato sauce is one of my go-tos. Mix that with a little spaghetti and a salad, perhaps some garlic bread, and we're in business. But sometimes I honestly don't even want to do that much. And that's real life. Beyond that admission, there's often that quiet, consistent, nagging narrative that will start to surface in my head. And perhaps you're like this too. It's that feeling that, well, if I just did something a little bit differently, then it wouldn't be this way or it wouldn't feel this way, right? So it might sound like, well, if I were to just have planned better, or if I would have prepped those meals in advance, I wouldn't feel stretched for time. Or if I were to get a better system in place for how often and when I bought the groceries, we wouldn't be out of ideas or ingredients. Perhaps you grapple with the thought that somehow the quality of the meal reflects the quality of our care for the people that we're feeding, especially when it comes to our kids. And I'm not sure that food culture, primarily I'm talking about like this mainstream food culture in social media, really helps. It can. There are those quick fix meal ideas or those kits of inspiration that you might get on a weeknight that really do help or kind of boost up your creativity or give you a thought that you can take later into the week. They're often presented as like a vibe or an appealing aesthetic, right? And I get it. I love a good kitchen mealtime vibe. Makes me think of like a crisp autumn night and I'm cozy in the house. Maybe we've built a fire on the back porch and I've got my music playlist in the background while I'm making a big pot of soup. I could role play all day in that scene, people. But I can guarantee you that is not what cooking in my kitchen looks like the majority of the time. And so while there are days where social media may spark that idea or inspiration, I think there are often times where it can tend to have the opposite effect. It can actually make me feel inadequate. Or, as I'm sure for many of us, you start to play the comparison game, right? Because if I'm making breakfast for dinner in my house, there is no vibe to it. It is me making flapjacks out of a box and schlepping them from the pan to the plate, all while reminding my kids for the third time to sit down at the table. There's no cool brunch vibe or aesthetic going on in the Darling household that night. We're in a more of a basic survival mode at that point. So I do think that even though we know practically and logically that these are just the types of meals that are there to feed us so that we can move on with the rest of our night, there is that subconscious pressure that I think is absorbed over time. Here's often the inner monologue that may be running in my head most weeknights. It'll go like, what time is it? Shoot, it's almost 6 p.m. Stuart's not even home from work yet. And even though I wrote down that we're going to have pan-fried fish for dinner with veggies and rice, I forgot to take the fish out of the freezer. Can we pivot to make spaghetti from a jar of marinara sauce instead? And I bet 1 out of the 3 of the kids won't want that for dinner. So how hungry are the kids? And how much kitchen cleanup can we handle between now and getting the kids ready for bed? And so what's funny is like if you start to think about it, deciding what's for dinner isn't just about choosing the food. There are so many little different micro decisions and factors that are running through that process of determining how the rest of your evening is going to go, right? So we're not just choosing dinner. We're choosing whether there's enough energy and or time for homework or getting everyone to bed without a meltdown, which for any of my parents that have gone through those years, you know, you can either see meltdowns coming from a mile away or they are going to completely come out of left field. And so sometimes that choice is simply boiled down to speed and ease. And that's okay, because honestly, that's just what we need. And here's something I think we need to all remind ourselves and remind ourselves of it more often. Feeding people consistently matters more than feeding them creatively. If this resonates with you and makes you think of someone in your life that needs to hear that, maybe those parents from your group chat at school, or that colleague, or that friend or sister, share this episode with them. I think it's especially important for parents with young kids to hear this. And I say parents with young kids because it's the younger kids that, aren't as self-sufficient. We are responsible for providing all of their meals and all of their snacks, or at least helping them out in the kitchen. And so I think that's something we don't really give ourselves enough credit for often. Showing up night after night, even when we're tired, to put dinner on the table is not nothing. That's everything. The most important thing, in my opinion, about dinner time, and I have to remind myself of this too, is that it isn't always what you're serving. It's the fact that we've prioritized coming together as a family at the end of the day to sit down and eat together. Like that's the real win here. So we need to give ourselves more reassurance and more confidence to say, hey, it's okay to lower our expectations and to simplify a home-cooked meal when we need to, or do takeout when we need to. I have to work on myself too, to recognize that we need to uncouple the pressure to provide perfect homemade meals with being a good parent. It reminds me a bit of an episode I did a while back with Megan Splon, and it was on the mindset that a parent holds as we're making school lunches day in and day out. And it reminds me of something that she said within that conversation around the fact that you made lunch is enough. And I think similarly here, the fact that we make dinner and we show up and we're consistent and we provide that rhythm and that routine, like that's enough. Dinner doesn't have to stand for anything else other than just being dinner. It's funny is having a mom who also loved to cook and to entertain. If I were to think back of when I was really little, like elementary and middle school years, I could maybe name you 5 meals that she would make. So it wasn't that I remembered all of the meals itself that created that experience of dinner time. What I'm remembering are those meals that were her go-tos because she probably knew them like the back of her hand. She could pull them together quickly and she could provide dinner for all of us. Those are the meals I remember. But even bigger than that, I remember how my parents prioritized us sitting down together as a family for dinner each night. So if tonight is pancakes, leftovers, sandwiches, or takeout, that counts. That is cooking in real life. Dinner time isn't always inspired, but it can be consistent. And let that be enough to carry you through. So if you needed to hear this message today, I hope it helped you feel a little heard and seen, better understood, and just ultimately know that you have a community of fellow listeners with you that feel the same way often from time to time. So with that, keep showing up, keep being consistent. I know you are just doing your best, and we are all just trying to make it through that day sometimes. So take care, and until we talk again, eat well. Thank you all for listening to the episode today. If you find value in these stories, please share it with someone who would appreciate it too. A big part of why I wanted to start this podcast is to build a community of food lovers and home cooks alike. You taking less than a minute out of your day to share an episode, subscribe to the podcast, or leave a review is the greatest form of validation and means so much because it is helping us to build that community and connection with one another. Remember, a good story is meant to be shared. Until next time, eat well.